The boldest thing I ever did in my life began with a torn notice about a missing bird. I misread it, charged across the street, wrapped both arms around the thigh of the most feared man in the capital, and cried, "Father!" Years later, when the real Juju came fluttering home, I finally learned the truth. I had not spent all those years pretending to be his long-lost daughter. I had been pretending to be a bird he had misplaced. Hey everyone, it is Xiao Yu. The boldest thing this girl ever did began with a torn notice about a missing bird. She misread it, charged across the street, wrapped both arms around the thigh of the most feared man in the capital, and cried, "Father!" Years later, when the real Juju came fluttering home, she finally learned the truth. She had not spent all those years pretending to be his long-lost daughter. She had been pretending to be a bird he had misplaced. Let's go. My mother told me on her deathbed that my father lived in the capital. I asked, "The capital is enormous. How am I supposed to find him?" By then fever had blurred her senses. She clutched my hand, thought for a very long time, and finally managed one answer. "Handsome." I stared at her. "What?" "Your father is extraordinarily handsome." She coughed twice, then added with complete conviction, "The handsomest man in the capital. The moment you see him, you will know." I believed her. Only after I reached the capital did I discover how wildly irresponsible those last words were. There were far too many handsome men in the capital. The scholar who wrote letters for people outside the city gate was handsome. The young gentleman holding a chin in the wine house was handsome. Even the old man who sold sugar figurines looked as though 20 years younger. He might have entered the contest. I crouched by the gate for an entire day and found no father at all. What I did find were two women who claimed they could help travelers locate lost kin and who relieved me of my last few coins. They told me there was a hall of reunited kin in the city, a place that searched household registers for strangers from distant provinces. I followed them into a narrow alley and discovered that the grand hall consisted of one broken table, one pot of cold tea, and two hard-faced men blocking the door. They demanded another 10 taels as a name-searching fee. 10 taels. I doubted I would fetch 10 taels if they sold me whole. I clutched the letter my mother had left behind and ran. 2 streets later, one shoe flew off. I did not go back for it. I kept running until the crowd ahead became too thick to pass, then plunged straight into it. A fresh notice had been pasted to the wall. Someone had torn away its entire left half. The paper hung ragged at the edge, and even the large central characters had been sliced in two. I stared for a long while. What remained looked exactly like the character Chi-Chi. I looked down at myself. Well now, my childhood nickname was Chi-Chi. Beside me, several people were whispering. I heard Lord Director PA has lost his precious one. He has kept it for years. His temper has been foul ever since. Whoever brings it back will be richly rewarded. My eyes brightened little by little. Precious one. Kept for years, called Chi-Chi. I looked down at myself again. It was not a perfect match, but it was not entirely impossible either. Behind me, the two swindling women were already shouting curses as they caught sight of me. I hardened my heart. Whether the pieces fit was no longer the important part. A father was the sort of thing one could claim first and investigate later. At that very moment, a pair of vermilion gates opened across the street. A squad of Eastern Depot guards came out first, sabers at their hips. The crowd that had packed the road shoulder to shoulder split apart in an instant, as neatly as cloth under a blade. Then a man stepped through the gates. He wore a dark crimson court robe belted with jade. He was tall, straight-backed, and broad-shouldered. His skin was so pale it seemed almost bloodless. His eyes were narrow and black, his brow sharp, yet the corners of those eyes lifted just enough to make his face dangerously beautiful. Lantern light spilled across him. My heart gave one violent thump. This was bad. Mother had not lied after all. This was, without question, the handsomest one I had seen so far. Someone beside me murmured, "Lord Director Pei." Another voice dropped even lower. "The 9,000-year lord." I looked at the torn notice. Then at him. Then I remembered Mother's words, "You will know the moment you see him." 3 pieces of evidence. How much more proof could heaven possibly send? Holding my one surviving shoe in my hand, I charged into the street. Sabers hissed from their sheaths all around me. The man stopped. I threw myself forward, seized his thigh with both arms, and shouted, "Father!" The entire street fell silent, so silent that I heard someone behind me suck in a breath. Pei Yanheng lowered his eyes. I tipped my face up. He stared down at me for a very long moment. Neither of us spoke. Then he asked, "What did you call this director?" I tightened my grip. If I let go now, I suspected I might also let go of my life. Father, silence. Your daughter has suffered terribly trying to find you. Every Eastern Depot guard behind him lowered his head at once. I could not say why, but I had the distinct feeling it was not out of respect. They were trying not to laugh. Pei Yanheng studied me for another moment. Then his gaze moved over my shoulder and landed on the 2 women who had chased me down the street. Their faces turned white. They spun and fled. Several guards slipped after them without a word. I quietly breathed out. I had not finished the breath when the back of my collar tightened. Pei Yanheng pinched the fabric between 2 fingers and peeled me bodily off his leg. Chi-Chi? I nodded at once. Do you know who this director is? Yes. Who? I answered with the certainty of a magistrate delivering judgment. My father. Silence fell again. Pei Yanheng closed his eyes briefly. He looked as though he had suddenly developed a headache. To prove I was not simply running through the capital claiming random men as kin, I hurriedly pulled the letter from inside my clothes. My mother left you a letter as well. Pei Yanheng took it. I watched his gaze fall to the writing on the envelope, and stop. A rather unpleasant feeling crept into my stomach. What is it? He raised his eyes. A faint, dangerous amusement slowly entered those beautiful and rather merciless eyes. Young lady, yes? Can you read? I fell silent. He gave the letter a small shake. This says, for Cheng Wenli to be opened by his hand. I said nothing. I also did not release his leg. Pei Yanheng did not hurry me. At last, I lifted my face and asked with complete seriousness, Father, speak. Is there any chance you used to be called Cheng Wenli? He finally laughed. I meanwhile felt certain my good days had come to an end. As it turned out, they had only just begun. Pei Yanheng did not have me thrown into the street. He actually took me back to his residence. To be precise, he ordered the steward to wash her clean before bringing her inside. I went through 3 tubs of bathwater. By the 3rd, the maid Qingdai kept looking at me as if there were something she wanted to say. I asked, "Am I truly that filthy?" She shook her head. "Then why are you staring?" Qingdai considered her answer. "My lady possesses remarkable courage." I manage. There are very few people in the capital who dare seize Lord Director Pei by the leg. How few? Among the living. At present, only you. The washcloth slipped from my hand and plopped into the bath. That night, I was lodged in the eastern courtyard. The bed was made of rosewood, its curtains thick enough to shut out every draught. A deep carpet covered the floor. By the window stood a gilded frame nearly half my height. I walked around it twice and asked Qingdai for hanging clothes. She looked at the frame. Then she looked at me. "If that pleases my lady." So I hung my outer robe on it, much later. I learned it was a bird perch at the time. I had no idea. I merely thought wealthy households in the capital were remarkably particular. Even their clothes stands were carved to resemble tree branches. After midnight, I hugged the quilt and cried for a while, not because I feared Pei Yanheng. The bed was too soft, the food was too fragrant, and the roof did not leak. During the years mother was ill, we moved 3 times. Winter wind crept through our walls in summer. Damp climbed up from the corners. I had once believed that if only I could reach the capital and find my father, our lives would finally become easier. My life had indeed become easier. The only problem was that my father was very obviously the wrong man. The next morning, I seriously considered running away. I made it as far as the courtyard gate and found 6 Eastern Depot guards standing outside in a perfect row. I stopped. They stopped. I moved right, 6 pairs of eyes moved right. I asked, "Are you watching me?" Y'all 6 looked up at the sky. I understood. My legs had not been broken, but I had somehow grown 6 tails. At noon, the old steward, Pei Jong, brought my meal. I asked, "Where is father?" His hand trembled. "My lady, perhaps you should call him Lord Director." I called him father all evening yesterday. I did not hear him object. Pei Jong said nothing. I studied him. "Do you think he looks like my father too?" Pei Jong thrust the soup spoon into my hand. "My lady should drink more soup." Very well. Everyone in the PI residence had an admirably tight mouth. After the meal, I saved Pian Hing a piece of osmanthus cake. He did not return that evening, so I also saved him a lamb rib. By the time footsteps finally sounded outside the courtyard, the meat had gone cold. Pian Hing entered with Winter clinging to his robes. Several Eastern Depot officers followed him, still reading through case files as they walked. I snatched up the food box and ran toward him. "Father." The officers stopped speaking at once. Pei Yan-heng did not even lift an eyelid. "What is it?" I offered him the box. "I saved this for you." He glanced inside. "This director does not eat sweets." Lamb ribs are not sweet. "This director also does not eat food other people have touched." I looked down. One corner of the rib was admittedly missing, I explained. "I feared it might be poisoned, so I tasted it for you." In truth, I had simply been greedy that afternoon. Pei Yan-heng stared at the neat little row of tooth marks. A muscle at his temple twitched. I quietly pulled the box back. "Tomorrow I will save you one I have not tested." The next day, the kitchen sent me half as much food as usual. Pei Jong informed me that the Lord Director had given strict orders. From then on, I was to eat my own meals and stop saving anything. Whenever he returned, the kitchen would prepare something fresh for him. I thought about that, so he truly did find me distasteful. Yet that evening, while passing his study, I saw the same food box sitting by the window. Nothing remained of the lamb rib but bone. I stood outside and grinned for so long that a cold voice finally came from within. "Laugh once more, and this director will have you copy the 1,000-character classic 10 times. My smile vanished. I could barely read the following day. He bundled me off to the Eastern Palace. When Pei Yan-heng sent me there, he made it sound almost flattering. "You reckon quickly. Keeping you idle at home would be a waste." I wrapped both arms around the doorframe. "I do not think I am being wasted at all. I can still test your lamb ribs for poison." Without expression, he pried my fingers loose one by one. "The Crown Prince is reviewing old relief grain accounts. He needs someone who knows an abacus. There are clerks all over the capital. Why me? Because they can read." That was cruel. Pei Jong bent his head so low I suspected he was laughing again. Before I left, Pei Yan-heng pressed a command token into my palm. "If anyone in the palace gives you trouble, write down the name." I had just begun to feel touched when he added, "If you cannot write the name, draw the face." I shoved the token back at him. "I am not going." I went in the end. Qingdai told me the Eastern Palace often served roasted lamb at noon. Crown Prince Xiao Jingheng was not what I had imagined. He did not possess Pei Yan-heng's talent for making a person reconsider an entire street merely by appearing on it. He wore a pale moon-colored robe, his features fine and composed, seated beside a window with an account book open before him. He looked like green bamboo dusted with early snow. The first time I saw him, a deeply unfilial thought entered my head. Mother had been wrong. There might be more than one handsomest man in the capital. Xiao Jingheng looked up. "You are the one Lord Director Pe sent." I nodded. "Can you read?" I shook my head. "What can you do?" "Count eggs." He fell silent. I added, "And keep accounts. My mother once ran a little shop. If anyone owed us so much as 1 copper coin, I remembered it." Xiao Jingheng pushed a grain ledger across the desk. "Then look at this." I knew few of the written characters, but I knew numbers perfectly well. I ran the abacus from beginning to end. Then I did it again. This part is wrong. Where Yong'an County reported 3,000 measures of grain, but the cartage fee was calculated for 4,200. Either the grain grew legs and multiplied on the road, or someone slipped 12 extra wagon journeys into the public account. Every official in the room looked up. Their stares made me uneasy. Did I calculate it wrongly? Xiao Jingheng pulled the page toward himself and checked it again. A moment later he raised his eyes. Number I relaxed. Then will there be lamb at midday? For the first time he wore the expression of a man who had no idea what answer heaven expected from him. From that day onward, I remained at the Eastern Palace to sort grain ledgers. Xiao Jingheng taught me the words used in official documents. I taught him where rice shop bookkeepers preferred to hide stolen money. Until then, I had thought written characters were merely strokes standing in neat rows on paper. Later I learned that a grain ledger could contain a river, a granary, and the winter of thousands of families. Xiao Jingheng showed me reports from the disaster-stricken north. The court had sent plenty of grain, he said, yet by the time it reached the common people, a layer always vanished. I asked, where does the missing layer go? Into pockets where it does not belong. I considered that. Then turn the pockets inside out. Xiao Jingheng laughed softly. Lord Director Pei would appreciate that answer. As events proved, he did not appreciate it very much. 3 days later, I rushed home hugging a stack of suspicious ledgers. Pei Yanheng read them all and asked me only one question. How many new characters can you recognize? I stared at him. Why did heaven always place one person in the world whose sole purpose was to pour cold water over you at the exact moment you felt most triumphant? I slapped a sheet of paper onto his desk. Heaven, earth, dark. Yellow. Pei Yanheng glanced at the 4 characters I had copied from the 1,000-character classic. Your Xuan is missing a dot. His Highness said my calligraphy has spirit. The Eastern Palace has finally found someone who talks more than he does. Of course, he wishes you to return. I snatched up the paper and stormed away. I had taken 2 steps when a hand pinned it to the desk. Pei Yanheng lifted his brush and tapped the crooked character. Come here. I did not move. Are you not angry? I am. Then be angry after you write it correctly. I shuffled back. He took my hand and guided the brush, adding the missing dot. His hand was cool. Thin calluses roughened his fingers, the kind left by years of holding a blade. Remember, I remember. The next day, the paper vanished. I assumed he had thrown it away in disgust. Half a month later, while Qingdai was tidying his study, I found it tucked at the very back of a drawer. Beneath it lay an ugly stone I had bought from a street stall. When I had given it to him, I told him, this is a peace stone. It keeps its owner safe. Pei Yanheng asked where I had found it. A roadside stall. You were cheated. I held out my hand. Then, give it back. He did not. After that I brought him many things, sometimes roasted chestnuts in a paper bag, sometimes a little fox carved from wood, sometimes fresh fruit from the Eastern Palace. Pei Yanheng despised every single gift allowed. Pei Zhong quietly stored every single one away. Little by little, the whole Pei residence became strange. At first 6 Eastern Depot guards followed me whenever I went out. Later there were 4, not because Pei Yanheng had become less cautious. I complained that 6 made me look ridiculous. Madame Shui scolded me every day for eating too little. Then hid my favorite lotus root stuffed with sweet rice at the back of the steamer, where no one else could take it. Qingdai insisted she merely watched me because she had been ordered to. Yet whenever it rained, her umbrella always tilted over my head first. The most absurd change was in the Eastern Depot guards. Outside the residence, they wore faces cold enough to freeze a river. The moment they came home, they became different men. My lady, you are back early today. Would my lady like hot tea? My lady, a new fruit shop has opened on East Street. Once I asked Pei Zhong, why is everyone so kind to me? He thought for a moment. Perhaps because before my lady came, no one in this residence dared make a sound. I did not believe him. Was it truly that dreadful? In the old days, when the Lord Director dined, a whole table of men scarcely dared let chopsticks touch bowls. And now, Pei Zhong looked toward the main hall. My voice rang from inside. Father, Are you secretly pushing all the vegetables into my bowl again? Pei Yanheng's cool reply followed at once. Eat your meal, Pei Zhong sighed. Now we mostly fear that you will overturn the table. I considered that slander. I had never overturned a table. At most, I had struck one with my palm. That winter, Pei Yanheng was ambushed on his way home. He was not gravely hurt, but a blade had opened his shoulder. He refused to let me into his room. So I crouched outside his door with a bowl of hot porridge in my hands. Qingde tried to persuade me to leave 3 times. I stayed. Pei Zhong tried twice. I still stayed at last. The door opened. Pei Yanheng stood inside with an outer robe draped over his shoulders. His face was even paler than usual. What are you doing here? I held up the bowl, making sure you eat. This director is not 3 years old. Then why do you stop eating whenever you are injured? No appetite. You must eat even without one. Pei Yanheng looked at me. I looked back. We remained locked in a silent contest for several breaths. Finally, he stepped aside. Come in. I darted inside before he could change his mind. He sat on the edge of the couch. I pushed the porridge into his hands. He took one mouthful. I stared. He took another. I continued staring. Lu Chi-chi. Yes. If you keep watching this director like that, I will have you sent back to the Eastern Palace. I immediately lowered my eyes. After a while, I asked in a small voice, Does it hurt? Number liar. This director has no reason to lie to you. Then why have you been clenching your hand the whole time? He said nothing slowly. I reached out and slipped my hand into his palm. He glanced down. What are you doing? When Mother was ill, whenever I hurt badly enough to be frightened, she would hold my hand like this. The room went quiet. Thinking of her made my nose sting. Then Pei Yanheng's fingers closed gently around mine. Do not cry. I am not crying. Your nose is red. From the cold. There are 3 braziers burning in this room. I had no answer. This father of mine could be very difficult to like. Yet the next day, when I went to the Eastern Palace, Xiao Jingheng noticed the hand warmer tucked against my chest. Where did that come from? My father gave it to me. Did you not say yesterday that he finds you troublesome? I hugged the warmer a little tighter. Only with his mouth. Xiao Jingheng said nothing. He merely smiled at the time. I did not know that the first secret of Pei Yanheng's strange fatherhood was about to fly home on its own wings. The Mina returned on a rainy night. I had just come back from the Eastern Palace with wet shoes and stockings. I was crouched beside the brazier, holding the hem of my skirt toward the heat, when a commotion broke out beyond the courtyard. A bird merchant who traveled the southern provinces was kneeling beneath the covered walk. In his hands he held a gilded cage. Several years earlier, he explained he had acquired a mina. Only recently, while changing its cage, had he discovered a tiny gold tag hidden among the feathers at its neck. The seal engraved on it belonged to the Eastern Depot. Pei Zhong's teacup trembled in his hand. I noticed immediately. What is it? No one answered. The cage door opened. A glossy black bird burst out, circled the rafters once, and landed neatly on Pei Yanheng's shoulder. Pei Yanheng disliked anyone coming too close to him. Yet he did not throw the bird across the room. It cocked its head, studied him for a moment, then opened its beak. Its voice was piercingly bright. Father, Juju is home. The study died, so did my mind. Very slowly, I looked down at myself. Then, very slowly, I looked back at the bird. The bird was delighted. Father, Juju? Father, I asked, what is its name? Pei Zhong's face went pale. Madame Xue covered her mouth in the doorway. Qingde suddenly found the pattern on the wall deeply fascinating. I asked again, which Jew? At last Pei Yanheng reached up, caught the maddeningly noisy mina, and handed it to a servant. Jew from Guanju in the Book of Odes. I had studied characters for years by then. Of course I knew how that Jew was written. I also knew how the chi in my own childhood nickname was written, and suddenly inside my head, the missing half of that old torn notice slid back into place. I stood there for a long time. Then I asked the one question whose answer I desperately did not want. that notice years ago. It was looking for the bird, Pei Yanheng answered. Yes, I looked down at myself again. Splendid, I had not impersonated the long-lost daughter of the director of the Eastern Depot. I had impersonated a bird. No wonder there had been a bird perch in my room when I first arrived. No wonder no one in the P.I. residence ever spoke of my childhood with Pei Yanheng. No wonder the guards had looked as though they wished they could tear off their own ears when I first seized his leg and called him father. They had not been stunned to discover that the Lord Director had a daughter. They had been stunned to discover that his missing bird had somehow grown into a woman. I turned and walked away. Pei Yanheng called after me. Where are you going? To pack. Why? I stopped. My throat felt stuffed with wet cotton. The bird is back. And so I should give its place back. Silence fell behind me. When Pei Yanheng spoke again, his voice had cooled. A bird returns, and you think it has the standing to make you surrender your courtyard. I did not turn around, but I am not your daughter. Only after I said it did I hear how hoarse my voice had become. I went all the way back to the eastern courtyard where I had lived for years. When I opened the wardrobe, it was full of clothes, light spring robes, fox fur winter cloaks, fine silks for receiving guests, soft padded jackets for curling up at home over supper. On the dressing table were pearl hairpins Pei Yanheng had brought back from the palace. By the window sat the copybooks Xiao Jingheng had given me. At my bedside lay a sachet Qingde had sewn, a jar of sweets Madame Shui had hidden for me, and the hand-warmer sleeve Pei Zhong replaced every year before winter. I found the little bundle I had carried when I first came to the capital. Its cloth had faded almost white. I tried to pack my own things. I picked up one robe, then put it down. I picked up a hairpin, then put that down too. After a long while, I realized I no longer knew what counted as mine. If none of these things did, then what had all those years been? I collapsed over the table and cried with absolutely no grace at all. Eventually, my nose became so blocked I could barely breathe. After nightfall, food was brought 3 times. I did not touch a bite. The 4th time, the door opened. Pei Yanheng walked in. His gaze swept over the open bundle on the table, and his face turned darker than the rainy sky outside. The Minna had come with him. It sat in a cage and with spectacularly poor judgment shouted at me, "Father!" I cried harder. A vein twitched at Pei Yanheng's temple. "Take that thing farther away." The cage vanished, only the 2 of us remained. I wiped my face. "It is your real juju." This director kept it because one does not casually throw away a creature bestowed by the late emperor. Then why search for it? It had heard too many things it should never have heard. If it fell into ambitious hands, it could cause trouble. I swallowed. "Then why did you keep me?" This time he did not answer at once. Candlelight reflected in his black eyes. After a long silence, he said, "The first night you entered this residence, I had you investigated." I blinked. There was indeed a Liu Yunyang in Jiangyan. There was indeed a daughter. Your mother raised you alone for many years before she died of illness. As for Cheng Wenli, the man named on that letter, the Eastern Depot could not locate him at the time. You knew from the beginning that I was not Juju. Yes, that made me feel even more wronged. Then you watched me make a fool of myself all these years. Pei Yanheng's face did not change. This director pointed out the name written on your letter. I could not read then, which is why this director sent you to learn. I fell silent. The logic was so airtight that I nearly forgot to keep crying nearly. The ache was still lodged beneath my ribs. Why did you keep me? Pei Yanheng looked at me. At first, because you had more nerve than sense. Keeping you nearby while I investigated was harmless enough. And later, I discovered you were good with figures and could be useful to the Eastern Palace. My eyes filled again. And later, he fell silent. I refused to let him escape. What happened later? Pei Yanheng raised a hand and pressed his brow. Latter, you revised one memorial 5 times, ate half the lamb ribs, and insisted on leaving the other half for this director, and returned from every outing with 3 bags of useless rubbish. After feeding you all these years, if I threw you away now, would that not make this director the greater fool? My nose stung, so I am a costly stray you picked up. At least you know you are costly. Pei Yan hung. It was the first time I had ever called him by his full name. Outside the door, someone seemed to draw a horrified breath. Pei Yan Heng did not grow angry. He walked over and wiped the tears from my face. He was not especially gentle about it. Lucici? What? Who told you that a father and daughter must share a surname and the same blood? I froze. He tied up the bundle on the table, shoved it back into the wardrobe, and shut the door. Tomorrow we open the clan register. What? Have you not spent all these years insisting this director is your father? He gave me one cool glance. After calling me that for so long, do you now mean to escape the debt? The next day, the P clan register was truly brought out. Pei Yan Hung handed me a brush. Write it yourself. Write what? Your name. I hesitated. Cheeky. That hardly resembles a proper name. Then what should I be called? Pei Yan Heng had plainly thought about it before, no matter what he later claimed. Jie. I looked up. His expression remained calm. To understand the hearts of others, and to understand your own. My fingers tightened around the brush, and my nose began to sting again. You prepared that name already, did you not? Number. Then how did you produce it so quickly? This director is well read. I had nothing to say to that. I lowered my head and wrote the 3 characters Peiji because I was nervous. I wrote them enormous, and took up the space meant for 3 later names. Pei Yan Hung stared at the register for a long time. Have all these years of lessons been wasted? I hugged the register to my chest. You have no other children anyway. Why should it matter if I use a few extra places? He could not be bothered to argue. He took up his seal and stamped the entry from that day on. No one in the capital could call me some nameless girl of uncertain origin living under Pei Yan Heng's roof. He was the adopted daughter he had personally entered into the Pei clan register. Pei Zhiyi. That night, the household gathered for a feast. Madame Shui cooked 8 dishes. Qingde drank 2 cups of wine. Pei Zhong smiled until his eyes vanished into creases. Even the stiffest Eastern Depot guards came to toast me. With tea, I asked. Why tea? They all looked toward Pei Yan Hung. He answered mildly, She breaks bowls when she drinks wine. When have I ever broken a bowl? Last month. My hand slipped. Did it also slip the year before last? Every head at the table lowered. This time I was certain. They were laughing. I had intended to be moved for a little while longer. They ruined it, but that was all right. Suddenly, I thought this was good too. A few days later, I finally opened the letter Mother had left behind. Inside were only 2 sheets of paper and half of a yellowed marriage contract. Mother had written to Cheng Wenli, asking when he would return for her. She told him his daughter had been born. She said, my eyes look like his. She told him the pear tree outside the house had flowered that spring. Her final line read, I will wait for you to come home. She waited until the end. He never came. I sat for a long time with half the marriage contract in my hand. Pei Yan Hung never asked whether I wished to search for the man. Only when I was preparing to leave the residence did he hand me an old Eastern Depot file. Cheng Wenli came to the capital for the examinations more than 10 years ago. Afterward, he changed his name. I turned to the final page, current Vice Minister of Revenue. Shen Tingjiang. He looked up. He is still alive. Pei Yan Hung's expression darkened at once. Regrettably. I nearly laughed. Father. I only want to see him once. This director is not stopping you. I will be home for supper. Only then did he turn another page in the file he was reading. The kitchen will keep soup warm. I left with the marriage contract at the time. I did not know that the first words spoken to me by the birth father I had crossed half the realm to find would not be, Have you suffered all these years? His first words were, You can enter Pei Yan Heng's study whenever you please now. Can you not? Shen Tingjiang arranged to meet me in an unremarkable tea house. He was older than the portrait in the Eastern Depot file. His robes were immaculate. I could find almost nothing of myself in his eyes or brow. When I entered, he stared at me for a long time. I stared back countless times. I had imagined what it would be like to meet my true father. Would he know me at first glance? Would his eyes redden as he asked where my mother was? Would he regret never coming to find us? He did none of those things. His first question was, "How does Pei Yanheng treat you?" "Very well." He frowned. For some reason, my answer seemed to displease him. Then he took a thin ledger from his sleeve and pushed it across the table. "You can enter his study." "I can." "Put this inside." I did not touch it. "What accounts are these?" "You need not know." "Then why should I place them there?" Shen Tingzang lowered his voice into the grave tone of an official pronouncing upon the fate of the realm. Pei Yanheng has controlled the Eastern Depot for years. Court and country have suffered beneath him long enough. Once this ledger is found in his study, the censors will have grounds to investigate. You would be serving the court. I opened the book and read 2 pages. After years of studying accounts at the Eastern Palace, I recognized at once that the forgery was beautifully made, too beautifully. The figures balanced, the seals looked genuine, but the sequence of relief grain transfers was wrong. Before last spring's floods, the Yongchang granary had never sent that shipment north. This was not an account book. It was a knife someone meant to force into another man's hand. I looked up. "You want me to frame my father?" Shen Tingzhang's face hardened. "He is not your father." "Then who is?" "I am." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I laughed. "And my mother," he faltered. "How has she been all these years? I had bitter difficulties in those days. Once this affair is settled, I will send people to bring her to the capital." The smile slowly left my face. He did not know. He did not know mother had been dead for years. He did not know how far I had traveled alone to reach the capital. He did not know I had nearly lost every coin I possessed to swindlers outside the gate. He did not even know that my surname was now Pei. The only thing he knew was that I could enter Pei Yanheng's study. That was all. Suddenly, I was no longer angry. When a man is rotten all the way through, even hatred feels like wasted effort. Shen Tingzhang mistook my silence for hesitation and softened his voice. "Your mother came from an ordinary family. After all these years beside Pei Yanheng, people will inevitably say unpleasant things about you. But once you return to the Shen clan, with Chancellor Kui's household as your guarantor, you will become the proper daughter of an official family. And then you have known the crown prince for many years. With a cleaner name and station, you might one day be worthy to enter the Eastern Palace." I nearly laughed in his face. He had even calculated whom I ought to marry. The one thing he had never thought to calculate was whether I wished to acknowledge him at all. I slipped the forged ledger into my sleeve. "I will consider it." Shen Tingzang visibly relaxed. I left the tea house and went straight to the Eastern Depot. Pei Yanheng was eating supper. There was only a bowl of plain porridge and 2 small dishes on the table. His old stomach ailment had returned. I sat opposite him and placed the ledger between us, father. "Summoning asked me to frame you." His chopsticks did not even pause. "Shen Tingzhang." I stared. "How did you know?" "Among the fools lately, bold enough to set their sights on you, he ranks rather high." I narrowed my eyes at him. "You knew he would seek me out." I suspected it. "Then why did you not stop him?" Pei Yanheng set down his chopsticks. "He is your birth father. Whether you meet him, believe him, or acknowledge him is yours to decide." My nose suddenly stung. "Were you not afraid I might truly put this ledger in your study?" "Afraid of what?" "What if I chose my real father?" Pei Yanheng gave me a look. "Then this director would have wasted all these years raising you." Tears nearly rose to my eyes. Then he added, "Though with the racket you make on an abacus, one would hope you are not quite that stupid." The tears retreated from sheer irritation. I served myself some porridge. After 2 bites, I asked again, "Father, speak. Why have you never asked me whether I would choose you or him?" Pei Yanheng lowered his eyes to his bowl. "A person is not an object." "What?" You do not belong to whichever man reaches out first. He pushed a dish of vegetables toward me. You have a heart and a mind of your own. You will choose for yourself. I remained in his study until very late that night. The false ledger was sent away for examination. The next day, Xiao Jingheng came as well. He turned through the book, pointed to one entry, and asked, "What do you see?" Whoever made this knows the Ministry of Revenue's procedures very well. What else? These false entries all circle around Northern Relief grain, to make a lie look real. The writer had to know where the real silver went. Xiao Jingheng looked toward Pei Yanheng. Pei Yanheng said calmly, "Investigate the Ministry of Revenue." That investigation uncovered a hole large enough to swallow half a granary. Shen Tingzhang had intended to use a forged ledger to implicate the Eastern Depot. Instead, the forgery led us straight to the genuine crime. The seals on several relief granaries were real. The officials who handled the shipments were real. The only falsehood was the amount of grain that actually reached the disaster districts. The ledger recorded 100 measures, only 70 arrived. The remaining 30 passed from hand to hand until grain became silver notes. Those notes eventually flowed into estates and merchant houses owned by the Xiao Jingheng, and I checked accounts for 5 days without stopping. By dawn on the 5th day, I was sprawled across the desk and could barely keep my eyes open. He closed the final ledger. Enough. I sat upright at once. We have enough evidence, yes. I let out a long breath. Then he draped his outer robe around my shoulders. I meant, you have done enough. Go sleep. I looked down at his robe. Your Highness, are you being this kind to me because I helped you trace the accounts? Xiao Jingheng studied me for a moment. Number, then why? Because if you fall ill, Lord Director Pei will come to the Eastern Palace and demand an accounting from me. Of course, neither of these men knew how to speak like a human being. Still, when Xiao Jingheng turned away, I saw the tips of his ears were faintly red. I pretended not to notice. Half a month later, the Qi clan's theft of relief grain went before a joint tribunal of the 3 judicial offices. The evidence was complete. Officials involved in the scheme were stripped of rank and sentenced one after another for helping forge the ledger and concealing the path of the missing relief grain. Shen Tingzhang lost his office and was sentenced to exile. Before he left the capital, I went to see him one last time behind the prison bars. His face was ashen. None of the composed dignity he had worn in the tea-house remained. For Pei Yanheng, he said bitterly, you destroyed your own father with your own hands. I placed the half-marriage contract mother had left me into the brazier before us. Flames curled around the yellow paper. Lord Shen has misunderstood. He stared at me. I stood and brushed a fleck of ash from my skirt. My father's surname is Pei. In that moment, the stone that had pressed against my heart for years finally seemed to fall away, not because I had taken revenge upon anyone, because I had finally admitted something to myself. I came to the capital to find my father. I found him. I had merely searched under the wrong name. When I came out of the imperial prison, the Pei carriage stood at the far end of the long street. Qingdai waited beside it. I lifted the curtain and discovered Pei Yanheng sitting inside. He glanced at me. You cried. The wind. There is no wind today. Then ash got into my eyes. The imperial prison does not burn enough braziers for that much ash. I glared. Can you not let me keep one shred of dignity? Pei Yanheng shifted aside. Get in. I sat beside him. The carriage began to move. After a long silence, he asked, still hurting? I leaned against the carriage wall. A little. Regret it. Number, I paused. I only think Mother deserved better. Pei Yanheng was quiet for a moment. A person will misjudge several people in a lifetime. You have too. Mamie, did you misjudge me? He looked at me, still observing. I reached over in outrage and tugged at his sleeve. For once, he actually smiled. Outside the window, the long street slid behind us. I suddenly thought that if Mother could see me, she might have been at peace. She had told me to come to the capital and find the handsomest man there. There had been a slight misunderstanding in the middle. But the result was not so bad. I simply did not realize that the truly troublesome part was still ahead. After the Qi clan fell, every eye at court turned toward Pi Yanheng and Xiao Jingheng, and toward me. The old emperor grew weaker by the day. Rumors multiplied with every court session. Some said Pi Yanheng had supported the crown prince for years, only so he could continue ruling from the shadows after a new emperor took the throne. Some said my work in the Eastern Palace had always made me a pair of eyes Pi Yanheng planted beside the crown prince. Others had apparently arranged the next several decades of our lives on our behalf. If I married Xiao Jingheng, they said, Pi Yanheng would become father-in-law to the new emperor. Inner palace and outer court would both fall into his hands. I heard all this and decided the ministers had far too much leisure. I had not planned my own future that far ahead. They had already mapped out my entire future as empress. Xiao Jingheng, however, became increasingly quiet. In public, he began calling me Lady Pei. Lady Pei, leave the ledgers. Lady Pei, you need not accompany us today. Lady Pei, you may withdraw. Each time he said it, something tightened a little more inside my chest. I knew why he did it. He had to avoid giving the censors anything to seize upon. Knowing the reason did not make it hurt less. One day, the hall was filled with officials when I placed a newly sorted river transport ledger on his desk. Xiao Jingheng did not look up. Lady Pei has worked hard. You may return home. I gave him a perfectly proper bow. This subject's daughter takes her leave. I walked away quickly. I had passed through 2 palace gates before footsteps sounded behind me. Xiao Jingheng caught up and closed a hand around my wrist. Why have you been avoiding me? I nearly laughed. Has your highness not been avoiding me? The hall was full of censors. So in front of them, you cannot even know who I am. Cheeky, do not call me that. His expression darkened. I pulled my hand free. You want the throne. Then you cannot let them think my father placed you there as his puppet. The closer you are to me, the more poison they will pour into the court. I know. Then keep calling me Lady Pei. I turned to leave. Behind me, Xiao Jingheng asked, Do you truly not care at all? My steps stopped for one breath. Of course I cared. I simply refused to turn around. That evening, I ate half a bowl less rice than usual. Pi Yanheng noticed immediately. Did Xiao Jingheng bully you? Number than you bullied him. I stabbed my chopsticks into the rice. Can you not hope for us to get along for once? Pi Yanheng reached across the table and stole the chicken leg from my bowl. This director hopes you will bring less trouble into this household, I flared. Give that back. I thought you could not eat. I can now. He dropped the chicken leg back into my bowl. I took 2 angry bites, then asked, Father. When you first sent me to the Eastern Palace, did you intend for me to watch the crown prince for you? Pi Yanheng did not deny it. At first, yes, my heart sank. And later, I discovered you could not even keep your own accounts straight. When have I ever failed to keep my own accounts? Last month you bought 3 boxes of rouge and recorded only 2. The 3rd belonged to Qingdai. From outside the door came Qingdai's soft voice. It did not. I went still. This household was impossible. Pi Yanheng watched my cheeks puff with outrage and finally set down his chopsticks. Cheeky. I ignored him. If this director truly intended to use you as a rope around the crown prince's neck, you would never have been given a choice. I looked up. What do you mean? If you like him, then like him. If you do not, then do not. Whoever you marry, or whether you marry at all, you are not a bargaining piece in this director's hand. But the people outside do not believe that. That is their affair. They will curse you. Pi Yanheng gave a quiet, contemptuous laugh. Have they not cursed this director enough already? That only made my heart ache more. Precisely because he did not care, I cared twice as much. He had spent half his life fighting through court intrigue and raising Xiao Jingheng to the edge of the throne. I could not bear the thought that, because of me, people would say everything he had ever done had been for his own gain. On the 7th night festival, I asked Xiao Jingheng to meet me by the Luo River to watch the lanterns. Lotus lights covered the water. He wore an ordinary blue-green robe sitting at the bow of the little boat. He looked almost like the young man who had once taught me my first written character in the Eastern Palace. For a moment, I did not want to say it. I said it anyway. Your Highness, I'm going to Jiangnan. The brush in his hand stopped. For how long? I do not know. Why, the Northern Relief case taught me that every account written in the capital must eventually become something real in the provinces. I want to see the actual granaries, waterways, and rice shops behind the numbers. He looked at me. Only for that, I said nothing. Xiao Jingheng suddenly smiled. Peiji, when you lie, you pick at your sleeve. I released the cloth at once, too late. You are afraid that if you remain in the capital and I marry you, Lord Director P will be accused of controlling the next emperor through his daughter. I watched the lanterns drifting on the river. Not afraid. Then what? I do not want it. At last I turned to him. I do not want the day you marry me to become a tale about Pei Yanheng giving his daughter to the emperor. I want people to say Xiao Jingheng chose Peiji because he loved her. The warmth slowly left Xiao Jingheng's eyes. So you have decided for me that I am not to marry you? Not yet. How generous. I have always been generous. You only ever saved lamb ribs for Lord Director P. I stared. You have held a grudge over that all these years. He reached out and caught my wrist. Cheeky, I went quiet. You have thought for your father, you have thought for me, you have thought for the ministers. His gaze held mine. The one person you never asked was me. My eyes grew hot. One day you will be emperor. An emperor is still a man. An emperor cannot have everything. This one intends to. I nearly laughed from exasperation. That sounds exactly like something my father would say. I have heard him often enough. From his sleeve, Xiao Jingheng took a small jade clasp and placed it in my palm. If you wish to go to Jiangnan, go. I will not stop you, but do not go merely to run from me. I looked down at the jade. Then what should I go for? For what you yourself wish to do. He paused. I will secure the throne. You will discover the road you wish to walk. And then I will ask you again. Ask what? Xiao Jingheng lowered his head and touched his lips lightly to my forehead. Whether Peiji is willing to marry Xiao Jingheng. Not the crown prince. Not an emperor. Only Xiao Jingheng, me knows, stung all at once. I shoved at him. That was an ambush. Then come back and return the blow. In your dreams. I will wait. When the lantern boat reached shore, the Pei carriage was already waiting at the landing. Pei Yanheng sat inside. The instant I climbed in, he saw the jade clasp in my hand. His face cooled visibly. Where is Xiao Jingheng? Back at the Eastern Palace. Fortunate for him that he left quickly. I wrapped both hands around his arm. Father, send me to Jiangnan. The carriage fell silent. He looked at me for a long time. Can you bear to leave? Number, then do not. But I want to go. I lifted my face. I want to see the lives outside those account books. I do not want to spend my whole life being only your daughter or the person beside the crown prince. I want to know what Peiji herself can do. Pei Yanheng said nothing. I continued. And you should think about your own future too. This director's future is none of your concern. You cannot spend your entire life cleaning up the Xiao family's disasters. This director chooses to. Well, I do not choose to let you. I tightened my grip on his sleeve. Father, I want him to become an emperor. No one can call another man's puppet. And I want you, one day, to be free of being the 9,000-year lord. Pei Yanheng's jaw tightened. A long time passed before he spoke. A grain barge leaves for Jiangnan in 3 days. My eyes burned. Remember to eat when you arrive. You too, do not manage this director. Then stop managing me in your dreams. I laughed through the tears in my eyes. 3 days later, I left the capital. Xiao Jingheng did not come to see me off. He sent a letter instead. It contained only 4 characters. Go become yourself. I folded it carefully and placed it in my dressing case. A month later, news arrived from the capital. The old emperor was dead. The fifth prince's faction had tried to seize power in the confusion inside the palace. The imperial guard and the eastern depot crushed the attempt together. By the late emperor's final edict, Xiao Jingheng ascended the throne. Great Liang had a new emperor. His second letter arrived not long after. Once again, it contained only one sentence: the empress's seat remains empty. You need not hurry back. I laughed for a very long time after reading it. Then I tucked the letter beneath a stack of ledgers. The price of rice in Jiangyan had risen again. The matter of becoming empress could wait. At present, I was far more interested in discovering which wretch was hoarding grain. I remained in Jiangyan for 2 years. At first, everyone thought I had come south to amuse myself. A young lady from the capital, traveling with guards and wearing cloth too fine for a warehouse, did not look like someone who would truly squat among sacks of rice and reconcile accounts. During the first month, the rice merchants still smiled when they saw me. During the second, I dug through 3 full years of their old books. By the third, one particular shopkeeper developed a headache whenever I walked through his door. I uncovered several places where grain had been disappearing during canal transport. Then I worked with local merchants to establish price stabilization granaries, buying more in plentiful years so prices would not soar as sharply in lean ones. Doing the work was far harder than studying figures in the Eastern Palace. 300 measures of grain on a ledger were a single line of ink. 300 real measures had to be loaded onto carts, ferried across rivers, kept dry, charged for transport, and guarded against every hand along the road that thought it might steal a handful. I had once believed being good at accounts made me remarkable. Jiangyan taught me that calculation was only the first step. That same year, Pei Yanheng began surrendering his power. One by one, he handed Xiao Jingheng the Eastern Depot's rosters, secret archives, and golden seal. No one in the capital believed it. Some said the 9,000-year lord was merely putting on a performance. Others said the new emperor was young and would inevitably remain under his control. Pei Yanheng explained nothing. His letters to me grew shorter and shorter. The first said, "Eat at proper hours." The second, "Qingde says you are staying awake through the night again." The third, "Lose any more weight and you are returning to the capital." I was so annoyed that I wrote back, "Heal your own stomach before you try to govern mine." Half a month later, Pizhong sent me a letter. He said the Lord Director's face had turned very unpleasant after reading my reply. He also said Pei Yanheng drank half a bowl more porridge than usual that evening. I laughed so hard over the letter that I collapsed onto my desk. Several months passed. Then sudden news came from the capital. The 9,000-year lord Pei Yanheng had been attacked on the road home. His carriage overturned into the moat. His body was never found. The new emperor ordered a search for 3 days. On the 4th, the court announced his death and began the rites of mourning. When the court bulletin reached me, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. Qingde stood beside me, her face white. My mind emptied completely. I remember running out through the door. Then I remember stopping because I had nowhere to run. The capital was too far from Jiangyan. I could not even return in time to see him one last time. That was when someone knocked on the courtyard gate once twice. I did not move. Qingde went to open it. An unremarkable blue canopied carriage stood outside. The curtain lifted. A man in plain cloth stepped down. No dark crimson court robe. No jade belt. No Eastern Depot guards surrounding him. Only one old travel bundle in his hand. He stood at the gate of my house, looked at the account sheets drying in the courtyard, then looked at me. His brow drew together. "Has this director's room been prepared?" The court bulletin slipped from my fingers. "Father." I ran into him. The force of it pushed Pei Yanheng back half a step, but his hand came up at once to steady my back. "Grown as you are, and still charging about like a child." I held him tighter. "You are not dead. You sound disappointed." Pei Yanheng. Full name again. I was crying too hard to breathe properly. At last, he stopped teasing me. His palm settled gently against the back of my head. "Chi-Chi, Father is home." In that moment, I understood everything. The man who died in the capital was the 9,000-year lord. The man who survived was my father. By arranging a death that everyone believed, he left the last burden of his power and infamy behind in the capital. From that day onward, there was no Lord Director Pei at court who could be accused of holding the new emperor by the throat. Jiangyan, meanwhile, gained a bad-tempered master Pei. Pei Yanheng was dreadful at retirement. I encouraged him to grow flowers. He killed 2 pots of orchids. I suggested chess. The old players at the street corner lost to him for 3 days in a row, then carried away their boards and swore never to enter our gate again. I suggested fishing. He sat beside the river for an entire afternoon, returned empty-handed, and announced that the fish were too stupid to be worth catching. I asked, "What did the fish do to offend you?" One of them bit the same bait 3 times. Does that not mean you are skilled? It means the fish has no brain. I surrendered. In the end, Peizhong came down from the capital and saved the entire household. He brought a chest of old accounts. Pei Yanheng finally had something to do. That very evening, he found 3 mistakes in my books. I regretted Peizhong's arrival so deeply that I considered sending him straight back north. Qingde reminded me, "My lady, the Lord Director, is in an excellent mood today." I looked toward the study. Inside, Pei Yanheng was pointing out my errors while complaining that all my years in Jiangyan had plainly been wasted. "That is an excellent mood," Qingdai nodded. "He has scolded you much more than usual today." I began to suspect everyone who had once served in the Eastern Depot had a badly distorted method of judging happiness. Still, the courtyard became more and more like a home. Madame Shui arrived later as well. She declared she could no longer bear living in the capital and that vegetables were cheaper in Jiangyan. He asked what would become of the PI residence. She replied, "The Lord Director is dead. Who would stay there?" Then she turned to Pei Yanheng and asked whether he wanted lamb for supper. His face remained perfectly blank. Madame Shui looked at me. I nodded. "Cook it." The last plate was scraped clean one afternoon. While sitting in the courtyard over a ledger, I suddenly realized something. One by one, everyone from the old Pei household had followed us south. Peizhong claimed he was old and wanted somewhere warm to retire. Madame Shui said market food was cheaper here. Qingde said she had been ordered to remain with me from the beginning. 2 former Eastern Depot guards had changed their names and opened an escort agency nearby. Everyone had an excuse. Not one admitted that they simply could not bear to leave exactly. Like Pei Yanheng, he lowered my head and smiled for a while. So this was reunion. It did not always require drums and banners. Sometimes it was nothing more than chairs around a supper table filling up again, one by one. In the spring of the 3rd year, the imperial procession came to Jiangyan. The new emperor was touring the south, when word reached me. I was crouched outside a granary watching laborers carry sacks of rice. The local officials sent someone to fetch me. I did not go. "Tell His Majesty I am busy." The messenger's face went white. I kindly added, "You may repeat my exact words. He is accustomed to them." That evening, someone knocked at the courtyard gate. I opened it. Xiao Jingheng stood outside. Several years had passed. He was a little thinner, but there was a new steadiness in his face. No imperial procession stood behind him. He wore a plain blue-green robe. In one hand, he carried a birdcage. The mina inside had grown old. The moment it saw me, it flapped its wings in great excitement. "Father Chichi is home." I stared at it. After all these years, the creature still could not say anything useful. Xiao Jingheng looked at me and slowly smiled. "Pei Ji." I deliberately bowed with exaggerated propriety. "This commoner greets your majesty. You have learned manners at last." "Jiangyan has taught me much." "Then why, when we sent for you in daylight, did you refuse to come?" "It did not teach me that much." For once I left an emperor with no answer. Then Pei Yanheng's cool voice came from the courtyard behind me. "If your majesty has stood outside long enough, you may come in." The smile on Xiao Jingheng's face faded by several degrees. I nearly laughed aloud. An emperor entering our gate still had to pass the father-in-law, even if Pei Yanheng was not his father-in-law yet. Xiao Jingheng stayed in Jiangyan for a month. On the first day, Pei Yanheng assigned him the farthest western guest room. On the second, Xiao Jingheng accompanied me to inspect a granary. We returned half an hour late, so Pei Yanheng kept him up reconciling 3 river transport ledgers. On the third, Xiao Jingheng gave me a hairpin. Pei Yanheng glanced at it once and pronounced the jade mediocre. Xiao Jingheng endured all of it. On the 10th day, he finally placed an imperial edict of bright yellow silk before me. I looked at the name written upon it, Pei Zhiyi. An edict naming an empress? Yes. The ministers agreed. Xiao Jingheng sat opposite me, utterly calm. For 3 years I have cleared out the old factions, reorganized the imperial guard, dismantled the Eastern Depot's former powers, and opened the relief grain and river transport accounts to public scrutiny. Lord Director Pei died in the capital. A cold laugh sounded from outside the room. Xiao Jingheng paused. Then, with impressive discipline, he pretended not to hear it. No one can now claim that I rule because he placed the throne beneath me. I pinched one corner of the edict. So now you have come to take me back. Number then, why are you here? He reached out and placed an old jade clasp in my palm. The same one he had given me years ago on the lantern boat over the Luo River. To ask you, I lifted my eyes. Years ago, I told you I would ask again after I had secured the throne and after you had walked the road you wished to walk. His voice was quiet, but every word was clear. Pei Zhiyi, will you marry Xiao Jingheng? It was not an emperor asking for the daughter of the Pei clan. It was not a new sovereign asking for the adopted daughter of the 9,000-year lord. It was only Xiao Jingheng asking Pei Zhiyi. Yi was silent for a long time. Then I rolled up the imperial edict. I have conditions. Name them. The price stabilization granaries in Jiangnan must continue. Granted, every year I return here for a time. I will come with you. My father cannot be left alone. A cold laugh sounded from outside again. Xiao Jingheng drew a slow breath. He may come too. The courtyard became quiet. I could not help laughing. Xiao Jingheng looked at me. Anything else? One last thing? What? Never again pretend in public that you do not know me. For one instant, he looked startled. Then he smiled too. Agreed. I held out my hand. Then I have finished considering. Pei Yanheng's voice thundered from the courtyard. This director has not finished considering. I went silent. Xiao Jingheng went silent. The marriage was delayed another 3 months. Not because the ministers opposed it, because Pei Yanheng found the betrothal gifts insufficient. The new emperor made the Ministry of Rites revise the list 3 times. On the 4th, Pei Yanheng finally failed to find any serious fault. His only verdict was a cold, barely acceptable. On the day of the wedding, I did not sit inside the deep palace waiting for the ceremony to begin. First, I went to the osmanthus tree. Beneath it lay the myna, buried after dying of old age. Only 2 characters had been carved upon the little stone benefactor bird. I crouched down and placed a small dish of the fruit it had loved in front of the grave. Pei Yanheng stood behind me. I smiled. Did you not always complain that it was noisy? It was extremely noisy. Then why call it benefactor bird? He did not answer immediately. A few osmanthus blossoms drifted down. After a long while, he said lightly, if that creature had never gone missing, where would this director have found a troublesome daughter like you? My nose stung, father. You do not want me to leave, do you? Number. Then why are your eyes red? The wind. I glanced around. There was no wind that day. Very well. I decided to spare him his dignity. Later, I returned to the capital with Xiao Jingheng, but I never truly left Jiangnan behind. Before the spring floods each year, I came back to inspect the granaries. When Xiao Jingheng was too busy with state affairs, I came alone. When he could escape the palace, he followed me. Every time the imperial son-in-law entered our Jiangnan gate, Pei Yanheng discovered a fresh grievance. The tea was too hot, the gifts were too light, the emperor had too much work, the emperor spent too little time with me. At first, Xiao Jingheng endured these complaints with a vein tightening at his temple. In later years, he could calmly place food into his father-in-law's bowl without changing expression. The old people of the Pei residence remained in Jiangnan too. Madame Shui ruled the kitchen. Qingde kept the household accounts. Pei Zhong sat in the sun beside the gate every afternoon. The two former Eastern Depot guards who had opened an escort agency nearby came to eat with us on every festival. The whole table was noisy. Pei Yanheng always complained about it. Yet, if even one person failed to appear, he was the first to ask why. The world once called him ruthless. They said he had neither kin nor affection. They said a man like him was destined for a bitter end. Instead, in his later years, he had a courtyard full of people waiting for him to come to supper. He had a daughter who returned every few days clutching ledgers and complaining about someone. He had a son-in-law who happened to be emperor, yet still entered the house properly and called him father-in-law. Pei Yanheng never had a child of his own blood. Only much later did I understand that having descendants was never a matter of adding names to a clan register. Nor did family require blood to run the same way through every vein. Family was someone wondering whether you had eaten, someone leaving a lamp burning when the night grew late, someone traveling very far yet still knowing where to return when the road was done. That was home. And my home had begun with nothing more than a torn notice A character I read incorrectly, and the most shameless, most fortunate thing I had ever done. I had wrapped my arms around the leg of the most dangerous man in the capital, looked up at him, and called him father. The story ends with a small grave beneath an osmanthus tree, carved with two characters, benefactor bird. A grown daughter kneels to offer fruit. Behind her stands the man the world once called the 9,000-year lord, pretending the redness in his eyes is only the wind. It is funny, it is absurd, and it carries one of the simplest, hardest truths I've seen in any story about family. Love does not require blood. It only requires someone brave enough to claim you, and someone else brave enough to say yes. Watch how it begins. A girl whose mother just died arrives in the capital with nothing but a letter addressed to a man named Cheng Wenli, and a deathbed promise that her father is the handsomest man in the capital. She can't read, she is broke. She is being chased by swindlers. She sees a torn notice that she thinks says Cheeky, her own childhood nickname, and she decides with absolutely no evidence that the terrifying director of the Eastern Depot is her father. She throws herself at him and calls him father. And Pei Yanheng, the man no one touches, the man even officials fear to look at directly, lets her hang on to his leg while the entire street holds its breath. He knew from the first night, via investigation, that she was not his long-lost bird. He knew the letter wasn't for him. He knew she had made a mistaken guess, born of desperation. But he kept her anyway. Why? The story never gives a neat answer. And that is exactly right, because the truth is that Pei Yanheng, the ruthless spy master with no kin and no warmth, recognized something in that shameless, terrified girl. She needed someone to come home to. And somewhere beneath all his coldness, he needed someone to come home for. The contrast is sharpest when her true birth father appears. He shares her blood. He knows her mother. He should have loved her. Instead, his first words are not, "Have you suffered?" But you can enter Pei Yanheng's study now, can you not? He treats her as a tool, a lever, a path to political advantage. And Pei Yanheng, who shares no blood at all, treats her as a daughter, when the bird returns and she realizes she has been impersonating a myna. She tries to pack and leave. Pei Yanheng's answer is not a grand speech. It is, "Who told you that a father and daughter must share surname and the same blood?" Then he opens the clan register and makes her name officially Pei Jiyi. That is the moment the story's real meaning snaps into focus. The bird wasn't the mistake. The torn notice wasn't the mistake. Even the letter to the wrong man wasn't the mistake. The only mistake would have been refusing to say the word father out loud, out of fear of being wrong. The story's final line, "I had wrapped my arms around the leg of the most dangerous man in the capital, looked up at him, and called him father," is a reminder that every family begins with someone willing to be foolish to ask to claim. Not because they can prove the relationship, but because they need it to be true. The world called Pei Yanheng ruthless, kinless, destined for a bitter end. He ended his days in a courtyard full of people who left lamps burning for him, who saved him lamb ribs, who followed him south because they couldn't bear to let him be alone. He had no blood descendants. He had something better. People who chose him every single day. One question for you. Who are you still waiting to call family because you think you need proof? And what would happen if you just reached out, shamelessly, unproven, terrified, and said, I am here, I am claiming you? Tell me in the comments. I am Xiao Yu Mei. Every torn notice lead you to the right door. May every mistaken name become a truer one. And may you never, ever forget that the family you choose can be more real than the family you are born into. See you in the next story.